The alien market was loud. The air was dusty and dry. Strange creatures shouted and pushed. Colorful banners waved in the wind. In the middle of the market was a metal stage. On that stage stood a small alien girl. She was thin, her body weak, her big eyes full of fear. She had no clothes, only a dirty cloth around her shoulders. People laughed when they saw her. "She's too small," one alien shouted. "She can't work. She can't even walk straight," said another. The auctioneer hit his hammer on the stand. "Let's begin," he said with a grin. "Starting price, 1 credit," he shouted. Laughter exploded in the crowd. 1 credit was nothing. Even trash cost more. The girl stood still. She didn't cry. She had no tears left. "She's a joke," one woman said. "Throw her away," yelled a tall reptile alien. "She should be free, not even worth a collar," said another. But the auctioneer didn't care. He only wanted a sale. "Anyone? 1 credit? Come on," he barked. Then something strange happened. A hand went up at the back of the crowd. It was not a claw, not a tentacle. It was a human hand. The crowd went silent. Everyone turned to see who it was. A tall human man stood there. His face was calm, his eyes serious. The auctioneer blinked. He wasn't sure. "Human, are you sure?" he asked. The man nodded once. "I'll take her," he said in a firm voice. The crowd gasped. Laughter returned, but it was different now. "He's lost his mind. Why would a human want her? She'll break in one day. Maybe he wants to train her as a pet," someone joked. Another shouted, "She's cursed." But the human didn't move. He didn't smile. He didn't answer. He just looked at the small alien girl. The girl looked up at him. Her hands shook, her eyes wide. She didn't understand. No one had ever looked at her like that before. The auctioneer shrugged. "Sold! 1 credit!" he shouted. The hammer hit. The wood again. The deal was done. The human stepped forward. He climbed the stage slowly. The girl took 1 step back, afraid. But he stopped. He knelt down. He didn't touch her. He only held out a small energy bar. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten in days. She looked at the bar, then at him. He nodded once more. "Eat," he said softly. She reached out with both hands, took the food. Her fingers were cold and thin. She took a bite. Her eyes watered. Warmth filled her mouth. It was real food. The crowd began to walk away. They had lost interest, but a few still watched, whispering, wondering, why did he raise his hand? The human stood up. He looked down at the girl. "Come with me," he said. She followed. Not because she trusted him yet, but because there was nothing else, no one else, no place else. As they left the stage, the wind blew harder. The market noises faded behind them, but one question stayed in her heart. Why him? Why now? Why her? She didn't know, but the human's hand had never come down. The human walked slowly. The small alien girl followed him. Her feet were bare. The ground was rough and hot. She said nothing. He said nothing too. Crowds looked at them. Some laughed. Some shook their heads. Some pointed and whispered. But the human kept walking, and the girl kept following. They reached the end of the market. There was a transport pod parked near a wall. It was old but clean. The human opened the side door. He stepped inside, then turned to her. She stood outside, her body shaking. She looked at the open door, then at him. He didn't force her. He didn't shout. He just waited. Slowly, she stepped in. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss. She sat on the floor, in the corner, her small arms wrapped around her knees. The pod started moving. The city passed by outside the window. Tall alien buildings, neon signs, flying creatures. But the girl didn't look. She stared at the floor, afraid to believe, afraid to trust. The human opened a small box. He took out a bottle of water. He placed it on the floor near her. She didn't touch it, but her eyes stayed on it. He sat on the other side, far from her, giving her space. She had never seen kindness like this. Kindness without demand. Kindness without chains. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "What's your name?" The girl didn't answer. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. He nodded slowly. "That's okay," he said. Minutes passed. She slowly reached for the water bottle. Her hands trembled. She opened the cap, took a sip, then another. Her dry throat burned, but it felt good. The human looked at her again. "I'm Mark," he said. Still no reply. But she blinked. Her first sign of understanding. The pod stopped. The door opened. A quiet area. No people, no noise. A small house stood nearby. Mark stepped out, turned to her again. "Come," he said gently. The girl hesitated, then stood up, her legs weak, but she followed, step by step. Inside the house was warm, not big, but safe. Clean floor, simple chairs, a couch. She stood near the door, unsure. Mark walked into another room. He returned with a soft blanket. He placed it on the couch. "You can sleep here," he said. She looked at the couch. It was soft, softer than anything she had known. She didn't move, still watching him. He didn't push her. He sat down on a chair across the room. He took out a book and began to read, his voice low, reading out loud, not to her, but near her, a soft story about stars and ships that flew across the galaxy. She sat down slowly on the edge of the couch. Her fingers touched the blanket, so warm, so gentle. Her eyes closed for a moment, then opened again, still unsure. Mark didn't look up. He kept reading, page after page, and the girl fell asleep, sitting, her head resting on the couch. That night, for the first time in her life, no one shouted, no one hit her, no one called her worthless, just silence. And one human who never asked why, who just stayed. She didn't know his reason, didn't know his plan, but one thing was clear. His hand was still there, and his choice was still silent, but strong. The sun rose slowly over the city. A soft golden light touched the rooftops. The girl opened her eyes. She was still on the couch, wrapped in the soft blanket. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then she remembered the auction, the crowd, the human Mark. She sat up quickly, looking around the room. It was quiet. She was alone. Her heart raced. Had he left her? Then the door opened. Mark walked in, holding a small bag of food. "You're awake," he said, smiling. She stared at him, not sure what to say. He placed the bag on the table, then pulled out something wrapped in paper. He opened it. A soft, warm bread, alien style. He broke it in half and offered her a piece. She took it with both hands, her fingers still shaky. She sniffed it first, then took a bite. It was sweet and warm. Her eyes widened. It was the best thing she had ever tasted. Mark watched her, then sat down quietly. They ate together in silence. No words, only soft chewing sounds and small sips of water. After the meal, Mark stood up. He held out a small shirt and pants. "They're not perfect," he said, "but better than nothing." The girl took them slowly, her eyes blinking fast. She walked to the side room and changed. The clothes were big, but clean and soft. She touched her sleeves like they were made of gold. When she came out, Mark was waiting by the door. "Come, he said. "We need supplies." The girl followed him outside. The streets were busier now, shops open, voices loud. She stayed close to him, her eyes wide, looking at everything. Some alien saw them. They stopped and stared. "That's the human who bought the tiny girl. I thought she'd run away." "She looks different." Whispers followed them, but Mark didn't stop. He walked straight through the market, calm and confident. The girl saw a cage on one side. Inside it, another small creature, alone, scared. She paused for a sian. Eakin then kept walking. Mark bought food, water, and a small bag for her. He let her choose a scarf from a vendor. She picked a light blue one. When he paid for it, she looked at him. Her lips almost moved. She wanted to say thank you, but the words didn't come yet. As they returned home, a young alien boy shouted, "Hey, human, is she your pet?" The girl froze. Mark turned slowly, his face serious. "She is not a pet," he said. "She's a person." The boy blinked, didn't reply. Mark took her hand gently, not tight, just enough to guide her. They walked on, leaving silence behind them. At home, she sat on the couch again. She looked at her new scarf, then at the human. He was cleaning the kitchen area. She stood up, walked slowly to him, and placed the scarf on the table. He looked at her. She pointed to it, then touched her chest. A small gesture, but full of meaning. Mark smiled. "Thank you," he asked. She nodded. A tiny smile appeared on her face. The walk through the market was over, but something else had started. A bond, soft like her scarf, but stronger than words. The sky turned dark. Stars began to appear above the quiet house. The small alien girl sat on the couch. She held her scarf close to her chest. Mark was in the kitchen, boiling water for tea. The room smelled warm and safe, but her heart felt cold. She looked at the door, then at the window. Could she trust this peace, or was it another trap? Her people had smiled before, then they hit her, they lied, they left her in the mud. She had learned not to believe too quickly. Even if the food was good, even if the human seemed kind, Mark placed a cup of tea in front of her. "It's sweet," he said. She didn't move, didn't take the cup. He didn't force her. He just sat down again. The silence filled the room like thick smoke. Her eyes watched every move he made. Was he pretending? Was this a game? Would he change tomorrow? Would he sell her again? She stood up slowly, walked to the corner of the room, and sat on the floor. Mark looked up, surprised. "You don't have to sit there," he said. She didn't reply. He nodded. "I'll sleep early," he said. He turned off the lights, left a small lamp glowing in the corner, then went into the other room and closed the door gently. The girl sat alone, her scarf in her lap, the teacup still full. She stared at the walls, her fingers shaking, her thoughts racing. What if he was only waiting? What if this kindness had a price? She had heard of humans taking aliens to strange places. Some never came back. She didn't know if those stories were true, but they echoed in her mind now. Hours passed. The night grew deeper. Wind tapped at the window. The lamp flickered softly. She curled into a small ball like she used to in the cages. Suddenly she heard a sound. A door creaked. Her body jumped. Eyes wide. She held her breath. Footsteps. Slow. Gentle. Mark walked out. He was holding a blanket. He didn't speak, just walked toward her. "Oh." He backed away, her hands up. He stopped, didn't come closer, then slowly placed the blanket on the floor near her and stepped back. "I thought you might be cold," he said softly. "I'll go back now." And he did. He returned to his room, closed the door again. The girl stared at the blanket, her hands still shaking. Then she reached out and touched it. It was soft and smelled like the couch. She pulled it close and wrapped it around herself. It felt like safety. It felt like care. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry out loud. She just sat there, wrapped in something she didn't understand. Kindness. In her heart, a small spark lit up. Maybe, just maybe, this human was different. Maybe. His silence was not a trap, but something strong, something real. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she fell asleep in peace, still afraid, but a little less than before. Morning light touched the walls, soft and golden. The house felt warm, quiet, safe. The small alien girl opened her eyes. She was still on the floor, wrapped in the soft blanket Mark gave her. For a second, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered, the human, the scarf, the tea she didn't drink. She sat up slowly, looked around. Everything was still there, still clean, still calm. Then she heard footsteps. She froze. Her fingers tightened on the blanket. Mark walked out of his room. He smiled when he saw her awake. "Good morning," he said. His voice soft, not loud, not angry. She didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. Mark went to the kitchen. He poured water into a pot, lit the stove. The smell of warm breakfast filled the room. He prepared something simple, bread, fruit, and tea. He placed a small plate on the table, then looked at her. "Would you like to sit here today?" he asked. The girl stood slowly. She walked with quiet steps, like she was afraid the floor might break. She sat on the chair across from him. Her eyes looked down, but her hands didn't shake as much. She picked up a piece of bread, broke it gently, then ate it, bite by bite. Mark didn't rush her. He just ate his own meal quietly. She tasted the fruit. It was soft and sweet. Her mouth felt strange. It had been so long since she ate something fresh. A drop of juice ran down her chin. She wiped it quickly. Mark chuckled softly. "Messy eater," he said, not to insult, but like a joke, a friendly one. The girl looked up at him, surprised. She didn't understand the joke fully, but she saw no meanness in his eyes. He smiled again, and something happened, a soft twitch in her face. Her lips moved, just a little, not a big grin, but a smile, a real one, Mark noticed. He didn't say anything. He just looked at her and smiled back. The room felt brighter, even though the sun was already shining. After breakfast, Mark handed her a small cloth. "To clean your hands," he said. She wiped them slowly, carefully, as if afraid to waste the cloth. He walked to the shelf and took out a book. He pointed to a word. "This is star," he said. She leaned forward, her eyes studying the letters. He showed her another. "This is sky." Then another. "Safe." Her eyes moved from the letters to his face. He waited, patient, kind. She opened her mouth slightly, tried to copy the sounds. Safe, she whispered. Mark's eyes widened. "You said it," he said. "You did great." Her heart beat fast. She had spoken. A word, a human word. He didn't laugh at her. He didn't mock. He just looked proud, like she had done something amazing. She touched her scarf again, then looked at the word safe once more. She nodded slowly. Maybe she was. Maybe here. With this human. She was safe. And that morning, for the first time in her life, the smallest alien girl smiled, not because someone forced her, not to please anyone, but because she felt it deep in her chest. A soft, warm feeling, growing like a tiny fire, hope. The days passed slowly, but they were good days. The small alien girl learned new words. She learned how to hold a spoon, how to say thank you, and how to smile without fear. Mark gave her tasks, easy ones at first, like folding blankets or watering the small plant near the window. She did each task with care, trying her best. Each time she did something right, Mark smiled. Sometimes he clapped softly and said, "Good job." Those words felt like magic. No one had ever said them to her before. But deep inside, she still had fear. What if it all ended suddenly? What if someone came to take her away again? One morning, Mark said they needed to go to the market. "We're low on supplies," he explained. She nodded slowly. She wasn't as scared as before, but the market still made her nervous. They walked side by side. Mark held a list in his hand. The girl held her blue scarf wrapped gently around her neck. She kept her head low, but her feet didn't shake as much now. They reached the same market, the same noisy place. Shouts and laughter filled the air. But this time, she wasn't alone. Mark was beside her, and that made all the difference. They bought food, clean water, soap and cloth. A few aliens watched them again. Some still whispered, some still laughed. But she didn't hide this time. She stood beside Mark, her back straight, her eyes calm. Then something happened. Loud voices, screams. A group of raiders rushed into the market. 3 tall aliens with masks and weapons. Everyone ran in fear. Shops closed quickly. Goods fell to the ground. The girl grabbed Mark's hand, tight, terrified. Mark pulled her behind a crate. "Stay down," he said. His voice was low but firm. He stepped out to face the raiders. The girl gasped. "No," she whispered. But he was already gone. Mark shouted, "Told them to leave." One of the raiders pointed a weapon at him. The girl what? Ched, frozen. Her heart beat faster than ever before. She had to run. That's what she always did. Hide, run, survive. That's what she had been taught. But this time, something inside her changed. Mark had protected her, fed her, taught her, treated her like a person. She couldn't leave him. Not now. Not like this. Her legs moved without thinking. She ran forward, stood in front of Mark, her arms wide. The raider laughed. "A tiny thing wants to fight?" Mark tried to pull her back, but she shouted, a sound loud and sharp. "Stop!" Everyone froze, even the raiders, even herself. She had spoken, strong, clear, with power. The lead raider paused, then snorted. "This one's not worth it." They turned away, vanished into the shadows. The market was silent. People peeked out from behind walls. Mark looked at her, eyes full of shock and pride. You stopped them," he said. She looked at her hands, still shaking, but she nodded. "I didn't run," she whispered. Mark knelt down, placed a hand on her shoulder. "No, you didn't," he said. "You stood strong." And at that moment, in the middle of the broken market, surrounded by silence, the smallest alien girl in the city became a warrior, not with fists, but with courage. Her test of strength had come, and she passed. The market was still quiet. Shops slowly reopened. People came out of hiding, but their eyes were not on the raiders. Their eyes were on the girl. The small alien girl stood beside Mark, her chest rising fast, her hands shaking, but her feet stayed firm. She hadn't run, she had stood, and they had listened. Mark looked at her with pride, not as someone weak, not as someone broken, but as someone brave, someone who mattered. A fruit vendor stepped forward. He looked at the girl, then placed an apple in her hand. "No charge," he said quietly. "Thank you for protecting us." She blinked, holding the apple close, her heart warm. She had never been thanked before. One by one, others nodded at her. No more laughter, no more mocking, only quiet respect. Mark placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let's go home," he said. She nodded, and they walked back through the market, not hiding, not afraid, That night, the stars were brighter than ever. The house felt different. Not just a shelter. It felt like a home. Mark made soup. She helped stir it. They ate together. She smiled more now, not just with her lips, but with her eyes. After dinner, Mark showed her a small box. Inside it was a necklace, simple, with a small silver charm, a star. "This is for you," he said. She stared at it. Her fingers touched the charm gently. "Why?" she asked softly. Mark smiled. "Because you shine," he said, "even when the world tried to put out your light." Her eyes filled with tears. But this time, they were not from fear. They were from something else. Something gentle. Something beautiful. She wore the necklace proudly, touched it often, as if checking it was still real. Days turned into weeks. She learned more words. She learned how to write her name. She laughed. She played. And sometimes, she even sang. One afternoon, she and Mark sat outside the house, watching the sun go down. She looked at him and asked, "Why did you raise your hand?" Mark was quiet for a moment, then said, "Because no one else did." She tilted her head. "I was nothing," she whispered. He shook his head. "You were never nothing. You were just waiting for someone to see you." She looked at her hands, then at the sky, her voice small but sure. "You saw me." Mark nodded. "And I never put my hand down. Not once." The wind moved gently through the trees. She leaned her head against his arm, safe, strong, loved. She had been sold for one credit, laughed at by the crowd, forgotten by her people. But one human raised his hand and changed her life. Not because she was useful, not because she was strong, but because she was worth it, just as she was. And from that moment on, everyone who saw them together knew the truth. The human who raised his hand had never let it fall, and the girl he chose became more than anyone ever believed, because one act of kindness, one brave hand, changed everything. The next morning, sunlight touched the window again. The little alien girl opened her eyes. She wasn't on the floor anymore. She now had her own bed, soft, warm, and full of peace. She stretched her arms, sat up, and looked at the necklace around her neck, the silver star still there, still shining, just like her heart. She walked out into the small kitchen. Mark was already awake. He was cooking breakfast. He looked at her and smiled. "Morning, brave girl," he said. She smiled back. This time, a full smile. No fear, no hiding. They ate together. She poured water into cups. He passed her a slice of fruit. They didn't need many words anymore. The silence between them was comfortable, like family. After the meal, Mark placed a small notebook on the table. He pointed to a blank page. "I think it's time," he said. She tilted her head. "Time for what?" she asked. Mark picked up a pen, then pointed to the top of the page. "You need a name," he said gently. Her eyes widened. A name. She looked down at the paper. Her fingers touched it slowly, softly. I never had one," she whispered. Mark nodded. "I know. But now you do." She thought for a while, then picked up the pen. She wrote one word, slowly, letter by letter. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Luma. She whispered the word. Mark looked at it, then smiled. "Luma," he repeated. "It's beautiful." Her heart beat faster. It was real now. She wasn't just the small girl. She was Luma, a girl with a name, a girl with a home. Mark clapped his hands once. "Let's celebrate," he said. He stood up and walked to the corner. He pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Luma watched with wide eyes. He unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a small cake, simple but sweet, with tiny stars drawn in cream on top. Luma gasped. What is this?" Mark smiled. "Your birthday," he said. She blinked. "I don't have one." "You do." "Now," he replied. "Today is the day you chose your name. Today is your new beginning." He lit a small candle on top. "Make a wish," he whispered. Luma closed her eyes. She held her hands together and made a silent wish. Then she blew the candle. Mark clapped. She laughed. For the first time ever, a real, bright laugh. It filled the whole house. They shared the cake, one bite at a time, sweet, soft, warm, just like the feeling in her heart. Later that evening, Luma sat outside under the stars. She looked up at the sky. She wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't forgotten. She wasn't nothing. She was Luma, a girl with courage, a girl with hope, a girl who had been chosen by a human, and who chose to live. Mark stepped outside. He sat beside her. They watched the stars together, side by side. Luma touched the necklace around her neck, then whispered, "Thank you for raising your hand." Mark didn't reply with words. He just smiled, because she already knew the answer. The hand he raised that day never fell. And now, it held something more than a life. It held a name, a future, a family, and the galaxy would never forget the girl called Luma. Luma stood in front of the mirror. She touched her scarf gently. It still smelled like the day she got it. It reminded her of safety. It reminded her of Mark. She had grown stronger. Her steps were steady now. Her voice was clear. She no longer looked afraid. She looked ready. Mark watched her from the door. He was proud. She had come so far, from a small, broken girl to someone full of light. Today was a special day. Luma was going back to the market, but not as a scared child. She was going as herself, as Luma. With a promise in her heart, she held a small bag in her hands. Inside it, extra food, clean clothes, and soft blankets. "Are you sure?" Mark asked. She nodded. "I have to," she said. "There are more, like me." Mark didn't stop her. He knew her heart, and he trusted her. He walked with her to the same market, the place where it all began. People still remembered her. Whispers started again, but this time, not with laughter. They whispered her name. They looked at her with respect. She walked to the auction stage. It was empty today. No children, no cages. But she still remembered the feeling. She still remembered the fear. She stood on the stage. She held up a small sign. It said, "Need help? Come to me." Some laughed again, but not for long. Soon, a tiny alien boy stepped out from the shadows. Then another girl, then two more, all small, all afraid, all broken. Luma knelt down. She gave them food, wrapped one in a blanket, gave another her last fruit. She smiled at each of them, the same way Mark smiled at her once. "You're safe now," she said. One girl looked up, tears in her eyes. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. Luma smiled gently. "Because someone once helped me, and now it's my turn." More people watched. Some started helping too. A merchant gave shoes, a baker gave bread. Something had changed, and it started with her that night. Luma returned home. She was tired, but happy. Mark was waiting at the door. She ran into his arms. He hugged her tight. "You did it," he whispered. Luma nodded. "There's still more to do," she said. Mark smiled. "I know you'll do it." She sat down and opened her notebook. She wrote a new page. "My promise. I will never let another child feel alone." She drew a small star next to it. That night, as she lay in bed, she whispered to herself, "I was saved. Not to forget, but to save others too." The stars outside twinkled softly. Her necklace glowed under the moonlight. She held it close and closed her eyes. Luma had a name, a home, a family, and now, a purpose. Her promise was clear, and her heart was strong. She was once sold for one credit, but now, she gave hope worth more than any price, and as the stars watched from above, they knew the girl once forgotten would never forget others, because the hand that lifted her taught her to lift others too, and that was Luma's promise. The next morning, Luma woke up early. The sky was soft and gray. A quiet wind moved through the trees. She sat on her bed, holding her notebook. She opened to the last page, her promise still written there. She read it again and smiled. It gave her strength. It reminded her who she was now. She stepped outside. Mark was in the garden. He was planting new seeds. He looked up and waved. "Going somewhere?" he asked. Luma nodded. "Back to the market," she said. Mark walked over. He handed her a bag filled with food. "Take this with you," he said. "You'll need it." She hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Then she walked away, not afraid, not hiding. She walked like someone who belonged, because now she did. At the market, things had changed. People had begun to care more, all because of one small girl who once had nothing. Luma set up a small table. She placed fruits, bread, and clean clothes on it. A small sign stood next to her. "If you are hungry, you can eat." A mother with two children approached. She looked tired. Her clothes were torn. Luma stood up. She gave the children fruit and smiled at the mother. "No payment," she said, "just kindness." The mother's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Luma's answer was simple. "Because someone did it for me." By evening, more people came. A young boy brought extra bread to share. A shopkeeper gave her extra cloth. Even the grumpy merchant from before gave her a chair to sit on. "You've got heart, kid," he said. Luma smiled and thanked him. Kindness was spreading, like light through the cracks. And it all began with one moment, one human, one raised hand. Later that night, Luma walked back home, her bag empty, but her heart full. Mark was waiting with warm soup. She sat down beside him, tired but happy. She told him about the day. He listened quietly, smiling at every word. "I think the world is changing," she said. Mark nodded. "And you're part of that change." Luma looked at her scarf, still blue, still strong, like her. She stood and looked out the window. The stars were bright, the same stars she used to stare at in silence. Now they felt closer, now they felt like home. She turned to Mark. "I want to teach others," she said, "not just give food. I want to teach them how to smile again." Mark's eyes softened. "I think you already are," he said. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought of all the children she met, all the ones still hiding, still waiting, and she promised herself again, "I will find them. I will help them. I will love them the way I was loved." The circle was complete now, from nothing to everything, from fear to love, from pain to purpose, and all because one hand didn't fall, one voice didn't shout, one heart didn't give up, and one small alien girl became a light that others could follow. Her name was Luma, and her story had only just begun.